U.S. President Donald Trump has announced his plan to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin in Budapest, Hungary. The announcement came shortly after Trump described his recent phone call with Putin as productive. The timing of this move is striking. The war between Russia and Ukraine has entered its fourth year. The front lines remain frozen, and the world is exhausted by a conflict that refuses to end. In this context, any diplomatic gesture, especially between Washington and Moscow, can ignite both hope and suspicion. According to official statements, Trump and Putin spoke for over 2 hours on October 16, 2025. Trump called the conversation very productive, claiming that both leaders had discussed potential pathways toward peace. He also confirmed that a face-to-face meeting would be held in Budapest within the coming weeks. The Kremlin leader corroborated this, noting that preparations are ongoing, though it carefully avoided mentioning specific topics or timelines. Trump's announcement came just days before his scheduled meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Washington. Zelensky, facing intensifying pressure at home, is expected to demand new military packages, particularly long-range strike capabilities like Tomahawk and ATACMS missiles, to maintain Ukraine's ability to resist. For Kyiv, American support is oxygen. Without it, the war effort would suffocate. But Moscow has already drawn its red line. According to Russian state media, Putin told Trump that supplying Ukraine with offensive long-range weapons would be seen as a direct threat to Russia's national security and could destroy the foundation of any peace dialogue. He was less a warning than a message. Talk peace if you like, but know your limits. Ever since Russia launched its invasion in February 2022, the global order has been divided into two hardened camps. On one side, Western nations led by the United States and the European Union, united under the NATO umbrella. On the other, Russia and a handful of allies, China, Iran, and North Korea, each driven by their own calculations but converging in their desire to challenge Western dominance. The battlefield in Ukraine has become the physical embodiment of that divide. Every drone strike, every artillery duel, every burned-out tank is a symbol of two competing worldviews clashing in real time. Ukraine's forces, though hardened and resilient, remain heavily dependent on Western weaponry. Precision munitions, digital intelligence networks, and advanced air defense systems like Patriot and NSAMS have helped Kyiv survive. But survival is not victory. Without long-range offensive capability, Ukraine can defend but cannot truly deter. Meanwhile, Russia's military retains overwhelming advantages in artillery, missile stockpiles, and air power. Yet those strengths mask deep fractures. Sanctions have crippled Moscow's industrial supply chains, spare parts are scarce, and morale across several Russian fronts has visibly eroded. According to independent observers, Russian casualties have reached hundreds of thousands, with new conscripts replacing veterans at alarming speed. And yet, Putin endures. He projects an image of stability, of a nation unbroken, even as his economy bleeds. For him, meeting Trump is not about reconciliation, it's about legitimacy. By sitting across the table from an American president once again, Putin reasserts that Russia remains a global player, not a pariah. The choice of Budapest is deliberate. Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orbán, one of Europe's few openly pro-Russian leaders, has long played the role of bridge between Moscow and the West. By selecting a neutral European venue, Trump signals openness while avoiding the optics of capitulation. He's not flying into Moscow, but he's not forcing Putin into Washington either. Diplomatically, it's a clever midpoint. Politically, it's a gamble. Behind the smiles and handshakes, the stakes are enormous. Trump is attempting to recast himself as a global mediator, a peacemaker who can succeed where traditional diplomacy has failed. But the risk is obvious. If he appears too conciliatory, critics will accuse him of empowering an authoritarian regime that invaded a sovereign neighbor. If he pushes too hard, the meeting could collapse into mutual threats and finger-pointing, reigniting tension rather than calming it. For Ukraine, this meeting is a moment of both hope and fear. Hope that Trump can leverage his personal diplomacy to extract real concessions from Putin. Fear that those concessions could come at Ukraine's expense. The memory of past peace deals that froze conflicts instead of resolving them still haunts Kyiv. Any agreement that cements Russian control over occupied territories would be seen as a betrayal. That is why Zelensky's government insists on one non-negotiable condition: no talks without Ukraine at the table. Across Europe, reactions have been mixed. Some governments, especially in Germany and France, cautiously welcome any dialogue that could reduce tensions. Others, Poland, the Baltic states, and the Nordic countries, fear a repeat of history, a Western power negotiating over Eastern Europe without Eastern Europe's consent. No deals about us without us, one European diplomat told Reuters. Within NATO, discussions are equally tense. Military analysts warn that Russia may use any dialogue lull to rebuild its forces, reposition its long-range artillery, or shift production toward a new offensive. In other words, even peace talks can be part of the war. For Moscow, the strategy is clear: use diplomacy to buy time. For Washington, the goal is less clear: seek peace, but without appearing weak. And for Europe, the challenge is to stay united while facing both political fatigue and economic strain. The phrase "productive conversation" sounds harmless, even hopeful. But in the vocabulary of international politics, it often means something else. It could mean both sides agreed to keep talking, even if they agreed on nothing. It can mean a temporary ceasefire in rhetoric, not in combat. Or it can mean that behind closed doors, one side got exactly what it wanted, while the other was too polite to admit it. Still, the world listens, because after years of destruction, even the illusion of dialogue feels better than the certainty of war. Ordinary people, Ukrainian families displaced by bombing, Russian citizens silenced by censorship, and Europeans paying higher energy bills cling to the hope that someone, somewhere can end the madness. But peace has a cost. Every compromise demands a concession. And the uncomfortable truth is that true diplomacy rarely rewards justice. It rewards power. Trump's Budapest meeting will test that truth once again. Is the US still the world stabilizer, or has it become another player chasing influence in a game without rules? Can Putin actually afford peace, or does endless conflict serve his regime better? Can Europe balance ideals with survival, values with pragmatism? In the end, history will not remember the phone calls or press statements. It will remember whether the world moved closer to peace or merely pretended to. A productive call may not end a war. Sometimes it just buys silence long enough for new battles to begin. In this global contest, small nations like Ukraine become laboratories for power, where democracy and authoritarianism test each other's endurance. And if the Budapest summit fails to bring real progress, it will serve as yet another reminder that diplomacy without credibility is just theater with better lighting. If you see this conflict as more than just a war between nations, it's because the world, in truth, has never really been at peace.